of victory and the agony of defeat.
Great ball around the corner, Petticini. He beats them all. Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle. Sharks coming through. None of them can hold this.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a regular Tuesday live stream for the Tip Sheet podcast. It's Teamless Tuesday. We've got plenty to talk about, and I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, joining me to talk everything Parramatta and a little bit about the wider NRL. There is some stuff happening outside of the Eels that isn't just us getting murdered by injuries. There is a bit to talk about. It's my good mate, Sixties, a.k.a. Craig, the big fella. And yeah, we got a little bit of good news. There is actually some way, somehow, some good news to the Parramatta Eels, Craig. Kind of crazy amidst all these injuries as the crisis hits DEFCON1 for the blue and gold. But there are more injuries. And the outcome from Sunday was even worse than we initially anticipated, Craig. The club's injury report was updated today. More players added to it. Worst case scenario has been updated to existing players. You can pretty much circle round 13 as the turning point potentially for any sort of reinforcements for the Parramatta Eels. And before we do talk that, as always, amidst all the doom and gloom, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, John, doing well. It's a crazy busy week for us as usual. And it's a great week as well because we've got the 40th anniversary that's being celebrated of the Eels' 1986 premiership. Now, look, people will go and say this is, a celebration of not winning for 40 years? No, it's a celebration of those players from 1986 because even if you'd won titles between now and then, this is the 40-year anniversary of that title. And those players, that group of players in the 80s, whether you're fuming that there's been no others since then or not, and we've gone close in those grand finals since then. But you got to celebrate those players. You got to celebrate them while they're still with us, because unfortunately, as the passing of Neville Glover reminded us, these players they're getting up into their 60s, their 70s, and they're mortal. Some of them should be immortals, but they are mortal.
Separate issue, but yes. And look, the reality is, Craig, is that if we won 6 titles in between now and then, we'd still be celebrating the 40th anniversary of that title itself.
Absolutely. And as someone who was at that game and saw the fight that was there at the end of the game to hold on against a surging Bulldogs team, and you got to remember, they were going for their 3rd premiership in a row in 86. It was a title to be celebrated and players that deserve to be honoured. And we've got the big foundation dinner on Friday this week. There's junior rep finals on Saturday. And then we've got the big clash with the Bulldogs at CommBank Stadium, which will be a sellout on Sunday, whether it's a sellout because of Eels supporters there or a whole lot of Bulldogs supporters turning up. We need you there.
Yeah.
Anyone that's watching this now, listening to it later, we need you there now more than ever. But before we go on any further, John, a shout out to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. Greg and the team, great sponsors of us, great supporters of the Parramatta Eels. Greg was almost immediately on the phone with a message to me on Sunday, heartbroken. And we had that moment of silence that Greg suggested.
He was right there in the trenches last week,
Yep. And, of course, Parramatta Leagues Club at the home of the Eels. Big celebrations this week that will take place not only at the stadium but at Parramatta Leagues Club. And, John, I believe we are likely to have Tim Manor as our guest this Sunday. Boy, it's been pumping there in Sturlo's because we've gone Brett Kenny. We started off with the watch party with Steve Ella, but then the last 3 weeks we've gone Brett Kenny, unbelievable, full house there. Steve Ella, again, full house there. People loving them. we've gone a little bit different in the way that we approach this. We keep it as a shorter, more light-hearted chat with the players before handing them over to the punters in there to say g'day, get autographs, photos, all that sort of stuff. People seem to be enjoying the different format that we're going with this year. And as I said, it looks like, got to be 100% confirmed, but it looks like Tim Manor will be our guest this week. Really looking forward to catching up with Tim. And, then over to the stadium. So I can't thank Parramatta Leagues enough. They've really go out like they just are the home of the Eels on match day. They're home of the Eels every day of the year, but they're the home, really well and truly the home of the Eels on match days. John, apart from that, just a reminder, like and subscribe no matter what platform you're watching or listening to this on. If you'd like to jump on board as a sponsor of the Cumberland Throw, just reach out to us. We really would appreciate anyone that wants to jump on board. We've got great sponsors already, but if you'd like to be part of the Parramatta fan experience, we'd love to have you on board. And apart from that, John, let's hit the stinger.
Timing with the notification.
Well, John, let's start off with the positive, which is that Jaydn Su'A looks like he has signed with the club. It hasn't really been announced by the Eels.
We've had journos talk about it if it's done. We've had the Dragons give him the farewell notification. We've had everything but the Parramatta Eels announce it. So I understand the fans are a little bit leery after, being thrice burned twice or four times shy in this case. But I'm sort of like quietly confident he's there. Just quietly confident. So there is a cooling.
It's all matter. That is that cooling off period.
And even with the Dragons, saying that he is leaving, the cooling off period is still there. So I imagine we'll get an announcement sometime this week, Craig, based on what the journalists are saying. The signing of the contract last week sometime. So the question then becomes, obviously there's a wider question to have around Jaydn and what he brings to the team, but I see people in chat have already been asking, is he going to be an Eel in 2026? And we've heard conflicting reports there because initially there was some stuff talking about the Dragons not really going to stand in his way. And I think that probably speaks towards the divided nature of St. George right now because of what's going on there between the coach and the board and whatnot. But more recently today, I think they were saying that because there is news about another young player at St. George wanting out that we can also talk about because I'd be very much on board to try and pursue Loco Pasifiki Tonga to join the Parramatta Eels. But there was also an addendum there saying that now the St. George Dragons aren't inclined to let Su'A walk. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But let's talk about what Jaydn brings to the team, Craig. He's a special stage.
Just before we do, John, I do have a little bit to say on that, on the early arrival. It's not too much. It doesn't take too much imagination to know that the Eels want him early.
Yeah, yeah.
It's stating the obvious. That he would want to come early, I believe, is true. What I think we have now in that statement from St. George is maybe not so much an unwillingness to let him go early, but we're now into the dance, which is that they're going to say, this isn't really what we want. We'd like him to stay for the rest of the year. So now Parramatta will be expected to come to the table with some sort of offer.
I mean, St. George, you're looking at the cupboard right now. There ain't a lot there. There ain't a lot there.
Yeah. So, and it may well be, who knows, that one of those, it may be someone that's on the injured list, which then becomes problematic. But this is what I think. I think they want something in return if he goes early. And as diabolical as a situation as we are in, I wouldn't be surprised if the Eels come to the party there to get someone that they wanted. Now, we've spoken before about the Eels recruiting mid-season and the problems around filling an immediate need versus a need that they'd identified for next year. Because if you spend money on players that you hadn't planned to spend on mid-year to fix an immediate problem, that you have to. All of the players that would want to come mid-season want to add in the following years, or at least one more year, because they're being released. They'll be released by their club with nowhere for next year. So you're probably spending money and allocating a roster spot to someone that you hadn't planned on if you're just doing a random emergency recruitment now. And I think what we found with Jaydn Su'A is that he's a player that was targeted by the Eels. He was one of those that they would have spoken about as being someone that they wanted for next year, and they didn't want a mid-season recruitment to interfere with him and the money that was being offered and that sort of thing. So now it becomes, can he also be the player, not just for next year, but the player to help solve a problem now? And as I said, I think we're into the dance now. With St George making the public statement that they have, I think we're in the dance. Now, will we actually get him? I don't know, because maybe our situation is that we can't offer them something that they would be happy with right now, because we don't have the resources to make them happy right now. I guess it depends whether we come to the party and we offer them someone, because trade is obviously what they want. They're not going to be, no one's interested in money.
A little birdie told me that transfer fees are fantastic. So, if it's good good for Melbourne, then sure, it should be good for St George.
So they're going to be after someone, and maybe it's a situation where they're prepared to wait till someone's not injured anymore. If it's someone on the injured list, who knows? But that's where we're at. So, as I said, I think that's part of the dance. Now, John, I interrupted you when you were about to say what is it that Jaydn Su'A brings to the Eels.
Obviously, he's 1 year removed from State of Origin, I think. He's played a fair bit of representative football, specialist edge forward, and I would imagine that would be his primary mandate at Parramatta, Craig. But in this touch football era of set restarts and long strings of possession where forward packs are getting smaller and more mobile and agile, is there a chance that he follows ironically in the footsteps of a player that the Dragons have recruited in Kitione Kautoga? Does he become maybe the middle forward the Eels have been looking for, or do you think he's going to be a specialist edge for the Blue and Gold?
Yeah, I mean, our needs right now are middle forwards, aren't they? And even going into next year, it's middle forwards. Will we effectively change our identity and what we're able to do as a team with the current group of players? We have highly mobile middle forwards, but it's fair to comment that we've maybe lost some of that impact by not having that destructive, bullocking middle forward that's going to bend a line and win the collision, as BA used to want to say. It doesn't mean that you have to have an absolute giant, but you do want someone who's going to bring an impact. And as I said, I think what we have is mobility without destruction, if that makes sense. And is Jaydn Su'A that man that would bring that in the middle? Or does he fit into that mobility area with someone who can maybe play a bit of edge, play a bit of middle, but isn't going to create havoc through the middle or build that platform that we want? What do you think?
I'm torn, because it's pretty clear that middle is our single greatest concern, even among the backline, Craig. I think that just if you had to put a bullet point on most pressing concern roster-wise, I think it really is the middle. You're seeing the games being won and lost, not just for Parramatta, but in this, it's been true through the history of rugby league, but even more so now with the game being so fast and fatigue being such a consideration that you need guys that have the ability to play fast and play long. And that might mean, stripping down your pack a little bit and finding guys like Jaydn Su'A who can be impactful but also have the ticket to go on for a bit more. So that's why my, consideration was there for him playing through the middle, because obviously he is an excellent edge forward, representative caliber player in that regard, has been very good for St. George and was, as a young gun, was great for Brisbane too. Was it Brisbane and Souths he played for then St. George, or was it just Brisbane and St. George?
No, it was both.
Yeah, it was Broncos, Souths, and then the Dragons. So, he's been around the league for a while. He debuted back in 2014.
Did he follow Wayne Bennett to Souths?
Yeah, he might have, because he joined Souths in 2019. Yeah, that might be circa Wayne's stint there, right? I'm trying to think. Second stint. But he's a class player. So I really like this addition. I know that we've missed a few higher end players, and I think he very much falls in that bracket of a high end player, Craig. Like, he's not the game's best edge back row, and no one should be sitting here beating on the chest, shouting that one out. But he is a genuine quality addition to our team, and if we can get him this year, that's a big win. And I know you're right about the little song and dance is going to be played out now, whether the Parramatta Eels can satisfy what St. George want, or does Su'A manage to agitate enough, or is there just enough disruption at St. George? Because there is a lot happening there, Craig. Like, the Eels got their problems. The Eels got an injury crisis, and I know there's some stuff on the docket you want to talk about other supposed issues, which maybe I think there's some jumping at shadows going on there. But St. George legitimately have an issue there with their coaching situation, with what the board wants to do long term there, and they've got multiple players agitated now, Craig, because we mentioned Loco Pasifiki Tonga Jr. I think it's Jr. or Pasifiki Tonga, who was an outstanding young player in that regard as well. He's asked for a release, so they've got a lot happening there, and maybe just it reaches a boiling point where it's Flanagan or the players, and if it's Flanagan, then the players got to go. Yes.
I was just having a bit of a look at his positions played on Su'A on Rugby League Project, and saw he played 4 games as centre.
Yes. Yeah, he was pretty
ability.
agile back in going back a few years. Still not like a slug by any means, but he's a player that I've liked for a long time too. And I think we've mentioned it in podcasts long ago when he was a potential candidate at various times in his off contract windows that maybe the Eels could look at him. But he's been very good, so I am happy about this addition. And I see Neil saying, he's fingers crossed we haven't overpaid for him. A bit worried about the third year. I'm not worried about the third year at all, because he's the same age as Kitione Kautoga. That's a 3-year deal, or I suppose meant to be a 3-year deal for the Parramatta Eels. Kautoga's on a 5-year deal. So I think the Eels, by a bit of luck and happenstance, I don't know if you can say that it's the same caliber player as Kautoga. Some people might think he's a better player. Some people will say Keon's a better player. But the 3-year deal is definitely a far more manageable cap. Not a handicap, Craig, but just a cap consideration, right? He'll play through to his age 32, and then have opportunity to stick around the NRL if he wants to or not. And I think the Eels still get him for what I hope is the last of his prime years.
Yeah, and remember, the Eels are really looking for forwards who will be potentially leaders for some of the younger blokes that are coming through. Some of those younger blokes might be another 2 to 3 years, and we'll talk about the debut this week of Saxon Pryke when we get to the team list. But, John, the other sort of rumours are ones like Tomoko from Canberra and Braden Hamlin-Uele.
I like one, from the Sharks. Not a fan of the other. Tomoko, we've talked about. I'll be on board for Tomoko. Hamlin-Uele, unless you're confident that he can find another gear leaving the Sharks. Is it the Sharks he's still with, or did he go to the Warriors? Where is he these days?
Isn't he with the Sharks?
He was, yeah, but was he meant to go to the Warriors and he backed out? Is that, yeah, he's still with the Sharks. He was meant to sign with the Warriors at one point, I think. He's fallen off,
and he's getting into veteran territory
and
as well.
He's fallen off a cliff. So unless you look, I also acknowledge that at some point you just need a living body, a warm body in that spot. Like we're at the point where warm bodies being thrown onto the pile or the best we can do. And
you still got your boots, John?
Oh God! Well, I said at the start of the stream in chat that at the end of this stream we're going to be holding the draft lottery to play on Sunday, so everyone should get their tickets ready. But I guess, look, we mentioned loan players last week, Craig. If Hamlin Uele was the rest of this year in a move that doesn't compromise or mortgage your future, that you can just acknowledge it is what it is. Like, it is literally just a warm body to throw at the problem. He can go on there. He can absorb some minutes while we've got, because not only do we have an injury toll, Craig, we've got 4 players in the team list this week that are pretty clearly banged up. Josh Adokar's got a massive rib injury and he's gutsing through it, being a real tough leader in that regard. Mitch Moses clearly has a groin injury. Jason Rolls himself confirmed that Junior's got a pretty annoying lingering knee injury that I think is going to be playing through for the rest of the season. And he copped a direct knock there, which is what compromised his playing time and ability against the Titans. And then there is no confirmation this one, Craig, but it's pretty clear to anyone watching that Riley Smith is not 100%. He can't drive through on his passes from dummy half. He's also gutsing it out. So not only do we have 15 players on the injury list, we've got 4 players playing that could very easily be rested and rested long term in the case of 2, maybe 3 of them. So, yeah, you also, I think you have to, well, me, not trying to be arrogant, but in my perspective here, me as the fan, has to swallow some of my pride and expectations on recruitment here. And if Hamlin Uele is just a half-year option to get us through this year and not compromise next year, then okay, I don't rate him that much anymore. But he is literally someone that you can just put in your team list, go out there, play 40 minutes at middle forward, and okay. It's someone to play in the middle. I don't think he's going to fix things, but he also doesn't make things worse. So that's where I'm at with that. But Tomoko, you can look to sign with an eye for the future. That's a win-win in that regard. But there was a few other players that have been linked to us. I noticed Brent Reid was very positive in the Eels this week, Craig. So he had a few things to say about targets and how we're travelling. But yeah, there's options out there. It all comes down to that razor thin line you're trying to walk, aren't you? Between helping us right now and salvaging whatever we can from this season, because the Eels don't want to give up on this year. And we know we got 50 put on us twice this year, and people can talk about you have 50 points put on, you can't win a premiership. Mockers that goes back to 2001 when the Knights had 49 put on them and won a premiership. But it's yeah, I don't know. I would take Hamlin Uele on that provision. It's just for the rest of this year. Now, would he accept that? I don't know. He probably want another year at least. But
it's interesting that I think it was Riccio on 360 said what we've been saying as well about if you recruit mid-year and you end up with someone for next year and it impacts like your recruitment for the following year,
there is a genuine ripple effect that happens there, and it can. Yeah. Not only do you affect your impact or affect or impact your ability to recruit a player you've got highlighted as a genuine fix, it then creates an unexpected logjam in your pathways and your upwards progression of internal talent. So there is, like I said, there is a razor's line you walk here, because you do need to fix this problem immediately. You do need to try and salvage what you can from season 2026, and whether fans buy into it or not, still make a push for the top 8. Try and fight your way through to round 13 when you get your reinforcements back, and go from there. But you also can't compromise next year and the year before and the year after that, because the trickle on it ripples and ripples and ripples. So you don't want to make bad decisions now that hurt you more in the future.
So, John, let's have a look at the team list. No, let's go to that injury list, because the injury list has determined the team list. So we'll go to the injury list because it is literally a team. Okay, so Sean Russell's off the injury list this week, Craig. That's the good news. He's back in the team, coming off that concussion that he sustained on Easter Monday. So we got some good news there. But as I mentioned off the top, Craig, not only do we have new additions to the injury ward this week, but players that were already in the injury ward have been downgraded to essentially worst-case considerations. So going from best to worst in terms of availability,
Richard Penasini of bone bruising is expected back next week. That obviously helps with the backline depth, mostly in reserve grade, although Richie would come into consideration for an NRL debut at some point if the injuries persist. But he comes back, or is expected to come back next week. So too is Kelma Tuolungi. He had that concussion sustained late against the Titans, and he has been ruled out because it was a Category 1, even though Jason Rolls was a little bit confused as to what the grading was post-game. And fair enough to the coach. There's a lot you're trying to process in terms of data and information post-game, but it was a Category 1 concussion, so he's out for the game against the Bulldogs. But then it just gets bad, Craig, because you had a couple of players in Jonah Pezzett and Jordan Samrani that could have prospectively been back in the coming weeks, especially Jordan, who, if fans were there on Easter Monday, he had the pre-game chat on the field and was very positive about his return. It made it sound like he was a couple of weeks off, and instead he's been downgraded to round 13. So just goodbye another 6 weeks there. And
he has been really he's been positive, like just in his little chats with people at training. So it's
now is there an element of just a cautionary scheduling there, and he maybe has a separate timeline that he could be working towards? I don't know.
Let's have fingers crossed on that.
Let's hope that there is something there. But that was a real gut punch for mine, Craig, because I was counting on Jordan to be back sooner rather than later based on what he'd said on Easter Monday. But then joining him in round 13, Jonah Pezzett, who is obviously being pushed to the long-term side of that 4 to 6 week hamstring window. And that means that it falls in line with Isaiah Yongi, who's the ankle syndesmosis going back a few rounds now. So already got 3 players due back in round 13. You can throw in a 4th because Kitione Kautoga, who I think had been playing through an MCL consideration, Craig, it's gotten bad. So there was a tackle in that game that, was it a hip drop from like it was one of those hip drops that probably wasn't a full-on hip drop from Campbell, I think. But he's out to around 13 with an MCL sprain. And then bizarrely, suddenly we got Lincoln Fletcher, who we knew was injured, Craig, but he's popped up on the injury report this week. He's also on round 13. So, if Lincoln Fletcher wanted to debut in the NRL from, out of the blue, he's not due back until round 13. Not that he was ever going to be playing NRL this year, but just funny he's there. But the other one that was really bad, Arpa Twiddle, his grade 3 AC sprain, the AC joint sprain there, has put him out to round 15. So he is miles away now. And then the other one that's a concern, because there is no timeline yet, and he's going to miss at least one game, is big Sam Tuivaiti, who has been arguably our best forward this year. And he is to be confirmed with a concussion. And there was some, I think Ryle said there weren't concerns about the neck post-game, but on the field it looks like there were some mechanics being tested around his neck and whatnot. So that's just pure speculation for me, Craig. I'm not saying that with any medical specialization there, but I don't know what's going on there. But it was a bad concussion for Sammy, and you hope that he can make a speedy turnaround. But given what we know about those head knocks, mate, if he needs a couple of weeks off to heal up, take the time off there, because that's a lifetime injury right there if you rush it. So that's where we're at with all the other injuries. And, of course, there's the season enders, Jermaine Hopgood, Matt Dory, Bowie Simonson, ACLs and ankles there. And then the indefinite status of Ryan Madison with his head-related injuries. So the Eels have this week, 4, 6, 8, 10. They've got 13 players unavailable. They literally have a 13-man team there in the injury ward. And that's doing it rough. And I'll not mention there, Jake Tungle was back in reserve grade, Craig, which is good news because he copped a really bad head knock a few weeks back. So I'm glad he's okay.
Yeah, and glad as well that even in spite of the injury toll that club's going through, that he wasn't rushed back as well. So, again, that's good news. John, first of all, before we go into the team list, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that's there in chat at the moment, people who are watching live. What's the roll-up in chat at the moment, John? Have we got a big roll-up like we did after the game?
Not quite as big as after the game, but it's still a great turnout. I think we've got about 120 fluctuating around there listening and watching to us prattling on. So very much appreciated to everyone that's turned up, and a lot of great chat there, talking about obviously all the different things going wrong for the Parramatta Eels. And yeah, got a bit more to discuss about the Blue and Gold. We got team lists to go through, and some good news out of the weekend too, because there were some good results across Flegg and the junior reps. but a very strong turnout on a Tuesday night where we've got a few, what was it, 118 right now. So we've got a few first 13s to put out there for the Parramatta Eels if they need some auxiliary troops.
John, can you now go through the Eels NRL lineup for this weekend against the Bulldogs?
I mean, yes, you looked at that injury list and you knew there's going to be some patchwork on the fly sort of alterations done to this team, Craig. And surprisingly, the back line actually shapes up pretty well this week because we do get Sean Russell back. So Joash Papali'i leads the way with the one on his back. Brian Kelly out on the wing again. He'll be playing down that right sideline with the Fox on the left. But joining the Fox down that left sideline is Sean Russell with Will Penasini down the right. And important clarification here, guys, and I saw it in chat before too. With all the injuries, we're in bizarro land, Craig. The Eels actually got a win at the judiciary tonight. Not that it made a difference because Will Penasini's outcome of either taking the plea or fighting it and losing was 2 different tiers of fine. But he actually won the charge and has been downgraded to a 0 charge outcome. So he gets a charge stricken from his record there, which is a nice little win for Will for the high tackle that was in the first half. But that's the back line there for you. The Volkman will partner Mitchell Moses again in the halves. And I think, was it that David Riccio chat, Craig, that mentioned that Moses enjoys playing with Volkman, which it's good to see Mitch gassing up his wingman there. And I know some people will see that as an attack on Pezzett, but I think that was a bit of leadership there for Moses in a week where he's copped a lot of grief about his leadership, Craig. I think that was a nice little soundbite there from the captain to gas up, to build up his younger protege there. In the front row, with all the injuries, you see Luca Moretti getting his first start of the year. Luca's obviously still finding his feet in 2026, Craig, but this is a big opportunity for him. Chance to get some big minutes here in the front row. He'll work with Junior, who again is playing for that knee injury. Riley Smith is the dummy half. Whole new edge pairing this week because there is no Kautoga and no Tuolangi. Charlie Geimer and Jack Williams playing, I imagine, left and right respectively, Craig. I imagine that Williams will partner with Moses, but I could be wrong about that. Dylan Walker, who I know fans want to see on the bench, and I agree with them wanting to see him on the bench. This is a week where we probably couldn't afford to put Dylan Walker on the bench. He locks out the scrum in the 13. We go to the bench now. Talon Da Silva, making his debut for the Parramatta Eels. Great young kid, and I hope he really makes the most of his opportunity at Saxon Pryke. Then you got the old bull against the young rook there in Jack DeBellin, getting his second ever NRL cap as Tony Matayeli. So good luck there, young man. Make the most of it as well. And then another player in the mix for a debut is Tiankan Brown. And then rounding out the 6-man optional bench is Araz Nanva, who drops back from the starting backline last week because the Eels do have 5 healthy top roster backs. And then the extended roster, Lorenzo Talataina, Josiah Funayuta, and Muhammad Al-Madin. So a trio of rookies there who are one sneeze, cough, or bee sting away from playing the NRL right now, Craig. So it's an interesting team list. And look, it's honestly the best the coaching staff could do, all things considering. I don't think this. I'm sure some fans might argue one positional swap here or there. Maybe you want to start Jack DeBellin, who I actually thought played all right last week, which was good to see him actually get some good football under his belt. Maybe someone wants to see Tiankan Brown be bumped up of, like, say, Tony Matayeli. But I think in general, that's as good a team list as you could sort of ask for, all things considered right now.
I think this is where we're going to see whether we got some value at all out of Jack DeBellin as a signing, because I liked what I saw when he came on the field. I thought he was one of the players who could hold his head high in terms of looking like he was in the fight. He had, from the time that he came on, I think he made something like 28 tackles, and he might have only had 0 or 1 miss out of that, and he looked like he was trying to take the game to the Titans through the middle. We need that against the Bulldogs badly. We need it badly, John. And we know that someone like Luca will have that attitude. Whether he's ready right now, because he's had a rough start to the season, hasn't he, Luca? We know Junior's banged up. So it's a real challenge, John, because we've been losing the start of games. We haven't been building any any platform. And again, I'm going to use the BA-ism. We haven't been winning the collision early in the game. What we saw was the Titans last week taking on the forwards, just going in behind the ruck, play after play at the start of the game. So we were going backwards from the start. And then once we started going backwards, then they started using the ball. When we were using the ball, we hadn't won any middle at all. So we're using that shift, but we hadn't done any damage to the back line of the to the middle of the Titans.
With the fresh legs, because of the possession splits and the scoring runs, they just slid across and could account for it easily. Yeah, it's very simple, Craig, but obviously there's a degree of nuance to it. But if you don't ask those questions north-south, you're wasting your time going east-west. Again, it's like winning the collisions. It is just such a fundamental rugby league truism. And the Eels couldn't do it against the Titans, and worse, they started taking shortcuts. And that's why I looked at someone like Jack de Belin, Craig, who you brought up, came on, played just a fundamentally sound game. I think that it's on him, obviously not just on him, but I think that he needs to be almost like a lightning rod in that regard to bring the young players around him and just say, Rooks, just put the ball under your arm, just run hard, fall forwards, make your tackles. We go from there. If there are opportunities to offload later on in your third, fourth, or fifth carry, okay, let's go there. But I want you to just bang out 30 metres in your first 3 runs, and we go from there.
And that's what we need from Junior, and he's hampered by a bad knee, but we need him to simplify his game.
Yes.
But especially for a game like this, we've got to bend the line through the middle. We have to take the game to the Bulldogs. We can't let them get the ascendancy early. We can't let them be on the front foot. We saw against the Panthers what they were able to achieve when they got all that possession at the start of the game and they kept getting past the ad line, and you saw the likes of Sam Hughes actually score a try just with belting that ball up towards the posts. It's because they were causing that level of problem for the Panthers. They kept them on the back foot. They were going backwards all through that period, and Penrith never got onto the front foot at all during the game. And that makes you realise the sort of game that rugby league is at the moment, about how strong momentum and possession are in the game.
Always have been powerful tools in the era, like the entire history and eras of rugby league, but magnified more than ever, Craig, in this current metagame. I see Neil pointing out in chat, Rugby League Eye Test, great follow, great content there. I believe that it is a Parramatta Eels fan, a long-suffering Parra fan that actually runs the account. But he pointed out that every try the Eels allowed on the weekend came from 6 or more consecutive play the balls. The runs of possession and momentum are more valuable than ever. And it's not just the Parramatta Eels who have spoken about it and suffering from it. I think the Cronulla Sharks earlier in the year were pointing out that in this current game, you defend 2 or 3 sets and you've just taken out a chunk of your tank. Like you're so far behind in tempo and fatigue that it becomes so much harder to dig out of the hole, as it were. And you end up.
By the way, it couldn't have been everyone because we had intercepts and we also had that Keanu Kinney.
I suppose all the non what's it called?
Long range
ones, yeah. But yeah, because obviously we had 2 against the run of play from Joash's passes that went askew, and then the kick return that split Williams and Barlow. So yeah, there's we need to start. It's not even starting strong at this point because we don't have the cattle to start strong, Craig. You need to start consistent, and we need to stop putting ourselves behind the 8 ball. Stop just making errors and whatnot. And I guess one thing there is, again, I think there are a lot of parallels between BA and Jason Rolls and how they view football, Craig. There's a lot of play the game the right way, like the good way, and do the right thing. And I think that's reflected in how they conduct themselves about the officials. And I think that's also reflected in how the Eels sort of handle the wrestle. Famously under Brad Arthur, Craig, we decided not to contest the ruck the way other teams did to spoil the ball in order to try and earn a good whistle. Never came to us. Other teams, and the Titans did it to us on the weekend, Craig, are freely conceding those tackle 1, tackle 2, 6 agains to put the pressure on the officials to make those early calls and then stop it later, and it adds up very quickly. And we are giving away the late 6 agains, because it is what it is, and eventually we get caught off the ruck and we don't contest it. And at one point, even though the Titans had good scoreboard presence, they'd already raced out to 18 points, obviously, there was a couple of sets where I don't think they ran the ball strongly, Craig. Like, they ran the ball reasonably. It wasn't terrible sets. We tackled all right, but we're getting instantly caught off the ball, and we were getting up. And we literally seated the fast play of the ball on a normal run rather than a strong run, and the Titans just ran away with the momentum from that. And I just feel like we have to try and spoil a bit more, whether it's tackle 1, tackle 2, whether it's, absorbing some pressure early on of calls and then, baiting the referees to not make those calls later. I do want us to get a little bit dirtier in the ruck.
Yeah, I can. It's such a tough decision to make, because we know that we get caned.
But we get caned playing football the right way. That's my problem. We did it under Brad Arthur. So let's dirty the hands, mate. Let's muddy it up. Let's if they call us off, let's sit there for another second and say, because other teams get caught held against us, we get driven back 5 meters and put in the ground, or there's another second and a half of wrestling. We get held caught and we immediately hands off, roll away, give up to play the ball, and then our markers are out of position. Now our line's still resetting. Let's go the extra second this week, or this year. Let's actually make them have to put the whistle in the mouth, because we get the Phantom 6. Like, every team gets it, but we get plenty of Phantom 6 against scored against us where you're left going, what was that? Like, you caught held, he got up. What do you want from him? So let's give him the extra second of wrestle. What else do we have to lose when we're playing a stack of young kids and reserve graders right now?
Yeah. No, look, that's fair enough. And from our perspective, do we want to do a post-game show, the instant reaction, where we are bemoaning a lack of fight in the Eels, or whether we are ripping into a referee for ripping us off? I think maybe we might prefer to be bemoaning the referee for ripping us off than what we witnessed last week, because those sorts of things, I guess, John, for the eye test, they manifest as whether you're fighting or not. And there is a way to go about it without looking as if you are deliberately slow getting up. And I think it does come down to that level of fight that's there, that it looks as if the tackle's still active or there's things still happening. One of the things that I find the most concerning is where we're in that stand-up wrestle position, but you can see the ball's going to be offloaded. And that's really killed us at different times this year, just not wrapping that ball up, because that stand-up wrestle is now, it's permeated rugby league, because it's the way they can get away with slowing up the play the ball without actually looking as if you're slowing it up. You just get the players are there and they stand wrestle and they move a little bit. The defence gets into position, ready to go, and it looks cleaner to the referee than all the wrestle happening on the ground. The Storm and the Panthers had become experts at that stand wrestle.
Yes.
When we've done it, we have locked the ball up, and we're getting the second phase play that happens against us. And it seems to come at the worst possible times, because it feels like that defence line is a bit relaxed at those occasions where it's happening, or they don't expect the offload to come. And maybe there's an argument to be made there that referees aren't calling held quick enough. And then again, I would argue that the defence in those situations maybe don't want the quick held call, because they've got that wrestle that's going on that allows the defence line to set. So anyway, John, it's a tough time for us with how we play with the players that we have. So let's talk about a debut that's come for a player that we've followed since he was playing Harold Matts at the club, another Rouse Hill Rhinos junior. and also a fellow who's also another Rouse Hill Rhinos junior, I believe, in Tony Matteelli, making his second game. But firstly, to Saxon Pryke, a big congratulations for us. We love seeing Saxon being able to make his dream come true, running onto the field in NRL game, getting his Eels player number as a local junior. It's a debut that I wasn't sure that I would see this year, especially after Saxon's injury last year. So he's done really well coming back from
awful ankle injury at the end of last year. It was not Bailey Simonson bad, but it was pretty bad. It was very ugly. And yeah, look, Saxon, standout player through the junior pathways, Craig. He was one earmarked very early on to go on to that funnel and fight for an NRL spot down the road, and he's worked very hard in the senior grades. Flegg in New South Wales Cup in the last couple of years, he has really put in the big yards. I think he's added some ball playing and a bit of nous to his game, on top of being an excellent worker. He's a tough, gritty, combative, lock forward. He's not small, but he's not a monster either. But this is a deserved reward for him, especially after last year where he was playing his best football for a long stretch in Cup there, and then just at the worst possible time when there was a possibility of an NRL debut maybe last year, alongside someone like Will Latu. Both those boys had very untimely injuries last year. So very glad to see Saxon get that cap, mate, because once it's there, they can't ever take it away from you. You're a graded NRL player, and you join a very elite group of people historically.
And as you said, John, the great asset that Saxon's always had has been his motor.
Mm-hmm.
He could play as a middle forward. He could play long minutes because he was always ultra fit. It was the hallmark of his game coming through pathways. Then when he came up into the older grades, and I'll include Jersey Flegg in that. It was something that stood him out from other players, was that capacity to play longer minutes if he was needed to play longer minutes, and just to make effort on effort plays. So we congratulate Saxon on that.
And
it's
Neil, you're right that Saxon is another one from that 23 class in the SG ball. So going for that team now, graded NRL players, upper title obviously this year. Richard Penasini hasn't quite got there just with some horrific injury luck. Blaze Talangi, Moe Almadine's obviously on the cusp right now. Ethan Sanders did it at Parramatta and Canberra. Matty Arthur's played some NRL. Sam Tuivaiti, Charlie Geimer, now Saxon Pryke. And then there's a few players on the bench that probably won't get there, but we got plenty of time for Paddy Spence. Dom Stratus was in the starting back row that year, Craig. Got plenty of time for Dommy, but he's up in Queensland right now. That was a good team, mate. Good team. Won the premiership and got plenty of NRL players out of it. So
when you have, we know how rare it can be. There's instances where teams have won a junior reps title and produced no NRL players out of it. So to have a group like that get through, make their NRL debuts, and whether they go on to notching up 50, 100, 200 games, it doesn't matter. They've got their NRL player number, which is more than it's that real funnel effect, isn't it? As you're coming through from playing just local football through to elite pathways football, then up through the grades to Flegg, New South Wales Cup, and eventually first grade, to get that first grade jersey. It's huge congratulations to anyone that achieves that. If you put down people that get a first grade jersey, I look, we all will have shots about different players or what have you.
Exactly. You have your grumbles, but you also have to acknowledge that they've done something outstanding to get to first grade in the first place. And it's a very...
And many of them, their families have made a lot of sacrifices to get to that point. So,
and like for reference here, Craig, on the other side of that docket in 2023, Eels beat the Knights in a cracking game, 28-22. This was a very good contest. Really, it was a stressful game to watch, but the Eels and Knights played fantastic football. Fletcher Sharp, that's the only, as far as I can see, the only graded Newcastle Knight from that team. Like that's how tough it can be. They could have won that premiership. They'd have one NRL player from that squad. Ethan Ferguson, unfortunately, has flamed out. He was a pretty exciting prospect at one point at that big game in the New South Wales 19s. But I'm just trying to look. I don't think anyone else has played first grade in this team. I might be missing someone, but Miles Martin, former Eel, present, is he a Raider these days? He is. Still hasn't made his.
I think he's still down the Raiders.
Still hasn't made his NRL debut. So yeah,
might yet.
He might yet. But right now, the Eels have got half a dozen players that have played NRL from their side of the docket. Newcastle could have been premiers of just the one NRL player. That's how tough the junior pathways and the junior pipeline and that funnel can be.
Now, let's talk very quickly about Tony Mattielli, because he made his debut last year and he had a really good pre-season last year. And it didn't surprise that he ended up with an NRL debut. He made the coaches sit up and take notice. It was his best. Tony's probably had about 4 or 5 pre-seasons now. Last pre-season was his best by a country mile, and made the coaches sit up and take notice. Maybe he wasn't on their radar before, but it was just he did a lot of the little things right in the pre-season. They flagged him as someone to watch. The opportunity came up for him to debut. He got the debut. Was fairly solid in that debut. This pre-season, he was hampered by injury, which had been something that had happened to Tony before. That's why last pre-season was so good for him. So he's come in out of the pre-season where he's been a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of being ready to go right at the start of the season. Not saying that he wasn't ready to go, like in terms of being available, but
relatively
he was
speaking,
underdone in terms of a pre-season. So he's now got a few games under his belt. He brings the size. So when we're talking about the size of the players, if we're feeling that the Eels don't have that, he's someone who at least will bring that. So Coach Jason Rolls will be looking for some physicality from Tony this week.
Yeah, I mean that goes true for young Saxon too. Just their mandate, their KPI is rip in. Just get in there and play some aggressive, hungry football, because the Dogs are going to be fronting up. They're going to be fired up. They're at the other end of the spectrum, Craig. The Eels are throwing body bags onto the pile every week. They get back Leo Thompson to make his club debut this week, and there's also an outside chance of Stephen Crichton playing too. So the Dogs are getting fired up coming off their big win against Penrith, and realistic expectations on the young forwards here, but go out there and play with your hair on fire. Try and make a stamp on the game.
So just on that, John, with regard to the coaches, I've got a lot of time for our current coaches. I really have. I think they're going to take the Eels to good places. Right now is a tough time for them.
Mm-hmm. This is
what I can assure the fans. This is what I can assure the fans of, is that they are not accepting the players talking about injuries and the impact of injuries. Like if they hear a player talking about it, they're like, that's going to be a problem for the player. It's all about focusing on who's there and the job that they do. And that's the only way that it can be. The supporters, journos, social media commentators, we can all talk about the impact of injuries on the Eels. The players and the coaches can't. Coaches might be asked in interviews, that sort of thing. It can't be an excuse. Because when you're pulling on the jersey and you're out there, it's all about what we've spoken about before, fighting for the jersey, the colours, the badge, all that sort of stuff. And that's the attitude that the coaches are taking. And it's something that I'm really glad that that's the attitude that they're taking. And that's not lip service. I can assure you that's what the players what the players have been told. So,
I mean,
yes,
look, I respect the coach. I imagine this is, from the big man down, laying down the law there. There's a part of me that has to laugh and feel bad for the players too, because the injuries are absolutely a problem. But I understand the messaging there. It's you can't.
Well, they have to, because they can't look at someone that's not there and go,
It's one of those ones where simultaneously it makes sense, like within the bubble that is the Parramatta playing group. It is also, there is a degree of absurdism to it too, isn't there, Craig? Because from the outside looking in, like clearly the injuries are a problem, but when you're in that bubble, like absurdity is part of that bubble. That's what professional sports is. It's absurd. It's men in oftentimes, well, women too, sorry, but professional athletes in what essentially are pajamas. They wear fancy coloured clothes, running around doing stuff for the entertainment of a roaring crowd. So yeah, there is absurdity to sport, and when you're in that bubble, you're part of the absurdity. So that makes sense. Like the messaging is, huddle up, shoulder to shoulder. Don't make the excuse about injuries. And look, that's obviously an alignment too about not blaming the officials. And I think this is more of an immediate pressing singular sort of mandate here, or sort of dictate from the coaching staff. But yeah, I respect it. I also, as a fan, can acknowledge the absurdity too, like just because of where we are. Like,
yeah, but when you think about the messaging, John, because there's going to be the concern from a lot of fans about what is the culture of the Parramatta Eels. If you look at Sunday, you go, yeah, what is the culture?
And I think, look, that's where I think that the messaging is coming from, Craig. If you're going to be, me not having a laugh about it and talking about the absurdity of it, the reality is, the week before, Jason Rolls in the presser was absolutely chuffed with the effort. He even mentioned the Easter Monday game and the loss against the Titans, saying that in that game versus the Tigers, he saw things he didn't know the team had in him in terms of positive effort against adversity and injury, and maybe even a little shot at some of the bad calls there too. But then that wasn't there against the Titans. And I think that if you're talking about you're only as good as your last result, I think that's where this messaging is coming from. That what Riles saw, and he mentioned it directly, that there was a lack of spirit that he had never seen in this team. That's where I think that message is, that you guys cannot blame these injuries, because I'll throw you out. Like, whatever he says, like, I'll drop you, I'll demote you, whatever it is, or you get flogged at training, whatever the punishment is. He can't afford a repeat. He can't allow the rot to creep in from where they were against the Titans. He needs to, cauterize that wound, disinfect that wound ASAP.
Yeah, absolutely true, John. Just very quickly, can you take us through, and we won't comment on the team selections because we're pushing time a little bit with going through the team list, but just very quickly run through the New South Wales Cup and the Jersey Flegg team list.
Well, Cup obviously takes a hit this week, Craig. They had a tough loss to the Bunnies where they just couldn't contain Matt Duffy, who was electric against them on Sunday night. But Brad Avery is the fullback. They get Jake Tungle back on the wings, Mohamed Al-Madine on the other flank. Devonta Vivella, who's having a pretty good run, actually, Craig. Like, not without flaws, but he's making a bit of a fist of his opportunity. He stays in the centres, opposite of Araz, who obviously is part of that extended, the optional six-man bench there, but the suggestion is he will play here barring an injury to the NRL team, and God knows what's going to happen there. Lorenzo Talatona, also part of that extended bench, will be playing in this game, or presumed playing in this game, with Joseph Nora in the halves. Tiankin Brown, again, another sign that one of that six-man bench considerations will probably play in this game, which is after the NRL. In the front row of Max Tupou, Cruz Natili Schmidt at dummy half. Will Latu, Josiah Finrayuta, and Tyrese Lakini, the young back rowers there. Good job for Tyrese getting caught into the starting team, so he gets a chance to take over from Saxon. On the bench, it's Manny Luke, and then a trio of very good Flegg rookies. Trace Beattie, Zach Visconti, and Jordan Miller. That's a big blow to the Flegg, Craig, because those three have been awesome in the 21s. And in saying that, very deserved call-ups here. Whether it's been injuries and the injury crisis that opened the door for them, I think that each one of those three men could be commended and called a deserved selection for their early season Flegg form. Samuel Luizu, the 18th man there, right?
Yes, they had a pretty tough game against the Rabbitohs. The Rabbitohs did end up winning convincingly against them.
Eels got into the contest a couple of times, and then every time there was just some self-inflicted wounds. Matt Duffy lit him up. They struggled there, and unfortunately there was some, just some inopportune errors at the wrong time. So they hurt themselves a fair bit against South Sydney.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, of course, in our preview podcast. And now the Jersey Flegg team, John.
And just AJ's in chat saying he's glad to see Zach getting a call up into the cup team. It was a Roosters junior, obviously. And I was just saying he's been great in Flegg for us. He's been really
he's one of those recruits that I was talking about, John, where we may have found a few diamonds in the rough.
Yeah.
That we didn't expect. And what I'm now expecting is that with the injury crisis that has hit the Eels, that we were wondering how the coach, Jordan Rankin, was going to handle that elevation of SG ball players when he had a Flegg team that was firing on all cylinders. Well, he's going to have probably a number of them elevated to New South Wales Cup. And you'd have to go in that direction rather than necessarily look at bringing in players from Ron Massey Cup if you've got them firing and they're a contracted Parramatta player. So anyway, we'll move on with that Flegg lineup, John.
Yeah, and the Jersey Flegg, of course, is going to be changes because there's 3 Flegg players up in the New South Wales Cup. But Flegg on fire, top of the table, Craig. Big win, actually the exact same score, exact same tries and conversions as what they had against the Tigers the week before was what they did to the Bunnies there. And they look like this. It's Corey Lee at fullback, Jeshua Mar Nelson and Drizzle Ta'ula, the two external wingers. They've been great, yeah. Both have been really good. So another pair of fantastic pickups. Sia Money, Lealuai, and talking about SG ball players, Craig. Cordell Pritchard, who is not in this week's SG Ball team, he gets the call up to the Jersey Flegg, so not bad. Missing out on a SG Ball final or week 2 final in order to play Jersey Flegg's pretty good compromise. So well done to Cordell there, mate, and good luck on the Flegg game. In the halves, Harley Walker, who caught the eye last week, who played a really nice game at 5'8", will partner Cade Muljawi, and Cade himself has been very stable and consistent for the Eels in the halves, so good pairing there. Bo Lucian, Jack Hudson, and Javon Stevenson-Hala are your starting forwards or front rowers. Noah Parker, who played centres last week, finds himself on the edge this week with Callum McMenemy on the other flank. Marcus Ofanoa, who's been great for the Eels off the bench, starts at lock forward. Then on the interchange, you've got Kobe Raven, Elijah Shane Tapa'u-Taylor, Lennox Rosati, and Hayden Brown. Maddox Wright, the concussion or 18th man there. I think that's Hayden Brown's debut for the Eels, Craig. Don't quote me on that. I'm trying to keep track of all the players have been using this year, but I think that is his club debut there. So well done to Hayden if that is the case. But yeah, Eels on fire in the Jersey Flegg, and even if all the players have lost this week, still a pretty solid team.
Yes, John. It's as I said, I think they found some diamonds in the rough. Yeah. I really do. I think both of the wingers there, but the pack. Like they've really found some hungry fighters.
Yeah.
Because that's the quality. The quality of this Flegg team is the way they fight for points. I wasn't sure how they'd go as a combination because it seemed that we worry about sometimes the NRL team look like they're strangers. Well, these were strangers.
Yeah.
And even in spending a pre-season together, they really have been recruited from near and far, and they're doing an outstanding job. But we'll leave that further commentary on that for our preview podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we need to move on. I wanted to address those rumours around Mitch Moses because the thing about rumours is they get a life of their own, and let's say, for example, the journalists, whether it started with the journo or whether the journos picked it up from a fan site, whatever the case may be, when the journo picks it up, it gets a broader audience. Then what happens is you start to get social media commentary from, in this instance,
it was even worse this week, though, because it was on 360 and it was in a largely pro-Parramatta discussion that started, Craig, where I think Bulldog Richie was trying to put the boot in the rolls, and it's not the first time he tried to do that. He did it last year as well, and it actually sparked our big winning streak at the back end of the season. So maybe Bulldogs on our team secretly, and that's starting to turn around there. But the panel of Gordon Towers, Brayford Nasta, and it was Brent Reid, I think, were all largely pro-Parramatta amidst the injury crisis. And it was just thrown out there as literally with the caveat, hey, guys, I haven't heard anything, nothing to it, But the Eels are losing some big scorelines here. Do you think Mitchell Moses is unhappy? And from there, it's sort of like you said, breathed life into what has no other substance to it, and created this entire series of, rumor mongering and sort of maybe not insider scoops, but the implication of insider knowledge that Mitchell Moses is suddenly desperately unhappy at Parramatta.
Yeah, and then what ends up happening is the supporters, because people like to take others on face value. So if they're hearing that Mitch Moses is unhappy, well, this must be true. And if he's unhappy, then you start to get supporters saying, well, if you're unhappy, you can piss off, right? Now, imagine you're a bloke who's passionate about the jersey that you play for. You were a supporter of the club as a kid. You spent a few years away at another club because you ended up getting graded in their elite pathways. You've come back to the club that you supported and that your family supported as a kid. And all of a sudden you've got supporters telling you to piss off because there's some false rumours that you want out. He signed till what, the end of 29? It's...
Yeah, and look, it's more so.
John, just let me go through this, right? Because I want to get on this train of thought. I want to keep with it because people know I go to training, and yeah, there's pros and cons of that because you see the team train well, and you might be inclined to think, oh, we're in for a big game this week. And it doesn't always translate that way. There's little nuances to it. What I've learned over the years a little bit is that you want a certain amount of mistakes to happen for the team to perform well. You don't want training sessions to be perfect. If they're perfect, I don't think it works well for the mindset of the players because they get a little bit ahead of themselves. So you need the right number of mistakes so they're going to keep working on something. They're going to keep focused on that to be better at that come match day. And also the sessions, they're training against each other. So you put all that into context. But what you get a sense of, besides anything else, is the camaraderie and the spirit that's in the team. Because they're out there and you see whether they enjoy training, whether they enjoy each other's company, those sorts of things. And then you see things like how intently they listen to their leaders and to the coaches and those sorts of things. Because they're all the time going and stopping and talking, and it can be quite intense at times. Other times it might be a little bit less intense, and the players are enjoying themselves out there. I've never seen an instance where Mitch Moses looks like he's off to the players. And there's all these rumours that he's lost the dressing shed. It's a strange one. They're not talking about the coaches have lost the dressing room. They're talking about the captains lost the dressing room and the players. I've never seen an instance with it. Now today, and I put this on the socials this afternoon because I think I need to. And I don't like to comment on training during the season itself. But in this instance, there's nothing about the team's preparation that I'm giving away in this. So the team comes out and they've had video review and those sorts of things, and the coaches have certain things they want to work on. But also the players were heavily involved in the session and had ownership of significant segments of the session. And of course, the primary voice with that is Moses. And it's not him dictating. You can hear the discussion going on with the players out there. They're talking about all the things they need to do.
Look, there's anyone's been a killer will know there's no hiding from the people that are in attendance there. If something happens on the park, people in attendance would know straight away.
And in this instance, they're training on the grandstand field. So people that are sitting there watching, and there was a few people sitting there watching in the grandstand, it's echoing. The voices are echoing
bouncing
into the stand.
Off the stand. Yeah, exactly.
just like if you're there watching a junior reps game or a lower grade game, that you can hear all the talk out on the field. So you can hear the talk from the coaches, the players, all that sort of stuff. It was a real collaborative session. And I'm thinking, if there's any trouble around Moses, it's not that you're going to 100% see it out on the field, but I've never even heard the slightest whisper about it. And the thing about rugby league clubs is, if something's off, if there's a problem, you start to hear whispers about it. I've never heard a whisper about it. I've tried doing a little bit of digging to see if there was anything to it, and the responses have been no. No. What are you
Genuine
talking
confusion,
about?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, look, it's not when you've got a team that's had some problems with winning games, or they're dealing with their battling injuries and those sorts of things. You've got to work hard in aspects of morale and those sorts of things. But I'm watching them out there, and sometimes I think people might think, well, they shouldn't be happy out there if we're losing. You don't want to see players enjoying themselves on the training track if we're losing, just like you don't want to see players smiling at the end of the game. That's not quite the same thing. Coaches need to have players who enjoy training. Because if you're winning, I'm giving you the tip, you're going to enjoy training. But you want to be enjoying training anyway. Yeah. I remember years ago, John, when we were speaking to BA and his coaches, and one of the first things that they had to do when they took over a double wooden spoon
2014,
team was to make training more enjoyable.
Make them love football again. Yeah.
Players want to be there because they had players that just didn't want to be at training.
Genuinely broken morale.
Yeah. And when you've had issues with coaches at clubs, one of the where they lose the dressing room or whether they need changes is players really do stop enjoying training. And let's face it, when all of us played football or whatever sport you played, if you didn't play football, training had to be fun, because if it wasn't, you hated it. Yeah. I remember hating aspects of
exactly,
training.
And it just flows on everywhere. And look, Ron77's in chat saying, don't believe the rumours, but I do believe that Moses is incredibly frustrated in imperfections as his roles. And that's where I'm at, Ron. If anything, if Moses wasn't upset, Craig, I would be concerned. Getting their asses kicked out there. Like, of course you want your captain to be frustrated and fired up. And so, yeah, Ron, I agree with you. I don't buy into the rumours too. Like, if the players aren't upset and aren't, frustrated and not kicking stones, but fired up to try and fix this, then yeah, that's where I'm at if we're going to be talking about concerns and considerations. And Moses, absolutely, you can see him on the field, he's upset. Jack Williams dropped that.
He's a competitor.
Yeah, Jack Williams dropped that inside ball. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, if there's one thing that Moses is guilty of, it's that
carrying too much.
He'll end up taking on too much of it himself.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And be looking to turn things around and maybe overplay his hand here and there. It's because he feels that responsibility and he wants to compete. And people take that competitiveness to saying, well, he's so competitive, he'll want out because the team isn't competitive. Someone like Mitch Moses also knows that there will be better times when they've got a full roster, and we don't want to be talking about, he doesn't want to be talking about injuries. The players don't want to be talking about injuries, but that's also the reality of the situation is that he's at a club has fallen out of the injury tree and hit every branch on the way down. It's a shocking time, but yeah. And the other thing too, John, is that if we've got, as supporters, if we're buying into rumours that are really negative rumours, how does that help? If we're putting air into it, how does that help any situation if there is tension around the place, you keep breathing. You tell him to piss off anyway. Like if you want to go, piss off. Same for any players. If you want to go, piss. How does that help? It doesn't help. These are the times when I know the club's been criticised for saying united by the badge and oh well, we're not seeing that out there. We're not seeing them playing for the fans and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't help then if, as fans, we're ripping in. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the team doesn't deserve to be criticised. We were criticising, but it's like in any week, and this is what the coaches have to do as well. They rip in and they'll criticise the players. But then the point from there, to get a better performance, is you have to build them back up. You have to get behind them and support them.
It's give and take,
You're not
push
going to
and
get
pull.
a better performance. You're not going to get a better performance out of continuing to rip in day after day after day all the way to the next match.
I mean, yeah,
you vent, you feel your frustration, you communicate to the club, whatever you do as a supporter to say this is not good enough.
As the saying
But
goes,
if you
Craig.
keep putting the players down and it's the same.
The beatings will continue until morale improves. Like
anyone that's coached a team knows.
Yeah, it's give and take, push and pull.
Berate them.
Yeah.
If you just berate, if you don't look for ways to build them back up, to build them their self-confidence back up again, you know how much better players and teams perform when they've got some confidence. Well, if you don't build that confidence back up, then you're not going to get the performance that you want from the team. Mm-hmm. And as supporters, we've got a role in that as well. Yeah, vent, be angry, be upset about an atrocious performance. But don't then take that to the next game and be berating the players all the way through to that. They need to know that we're going to be behind them at the next game. And if they let us down, well, we let them know they let us down. But you got to keep building them back up if you want to turn it around. You're not going to turn it around by, kicking them when they're down. Like, it's just that it makes no sense. Psychologically, it makes no sense. Like, they're humans. I know they're highly paid athletes, but you go talking to a player and it's like there's no difference between them and the punters. Like they feel the stresses and strains of not winning just as much as we do. You might look at it and go, oh, they're just happy to collect the paycheck or whatever. Do you think players are really just happy to get beaten and collect a paycheck? It doesn't work like that. Anyway, I've had my say on that, John. I think we're have you got anything you want to say just to wrap up Sunday last week, John? Because it was ugly and we want to move on to building the team back up. But have you got anything you want to say? I've had plenty to say. Have you got anything you want to say?
Sorry.
Dealing with
no one's been I want to stress no one's done anything wrong in chat. Just want to keep the chatter about Parramatta and what we're talking about in the pod. There's other places to talk about other things like that, guys. No need to. Yeah, no one is doing anything wrong. I want to stress, but just keep it about TCT and the Parramatta Eels. With the Sunday wrap up, mate. We were. I'd like to think we were pretty strong on Sunday. We talked about. It sounds like we were pretty much in alignment with the coach. Funnily enough, that regardless of the injuries, and yes, the injury toll was beyond catastrophic. I invoked it probably wouldn't be your bag, Craig, but there's an internet adage or a meme that I invoked in the Team List post that I felt was very relevant this week, where we've let me just make sure I get it right because I don't want to butcher it, but that is the wrong post. I can't even click my own buttons right now. But we've there's a point where all of us needed to stop the injuries, and we've clearly passed it, but might as well keep going and see what happens anyway at this stage. And that's where we're at for the Parramatta Eels. But in saying that, we both sort of held true to the fact that there is a baseline level of performance that the Eels, the players need to have for pride in the jersey and for pride in their fan base, and that failed on Sunday. And it was harsh, but I think it was fair. And I think that was reflected in what the coach said, where there was just a lack of spirit in what he saw from his troops. And obviously, the fallout has been that the injury toll was even worse than we expected. It's a bit ugly. But, yeah, look, they just need to put the line for that effort last week and just find a way to compete for Canterbury. And look, obviously I want the win, Craig, but I just want to see him go out there and fight. And if they end up losing by 20 points but they've fought, I can cop that. I don't want to see them get 50 put on them. But if they lose by double digits, so be it. But they've got to be better than last week. And I know there's some guys that are genuinely walking wounded out there. I don't think Junior Barlow will be playing most weeks, Craig. I don't think Riley Smith will be playing most weeks. The Fox wouldn't be playing. Like, that's just where we're at the roster. If you take those three guys out, who's playing? Yeah. Just they got to put it behind them and just be better than last week. Neil, did they take the team sheet down? I'll give you a link here, mate. I usually get my New South Wales Cup teams from the Eels because they tend to put it out the first. There's the link for this week's team sheet. But yes, in saying that, and while I do understand where the coach is coming from, the injury toll is just so far beyond absurd at this point. Maybe I've got a bit more empathy for the boys in my heart than I thought I did on Sunday, because it is so brutal.
Yeah. I think we're all guilty of feeling that emotion on Sunday, and you can't take them. I've said it before. You can't take the emotion out of supporting a team. And everyone was so deflated after Sunday. And it's not that now you're more forgiving. It's just that the reality of situations kicks in a bit as well. Mind you, if we see the lack of fight, that's just never going to be acceptable. So, John, let's move on to all of last week's results.
Yes, because barring the New South Wales Cup, because that was a rough one there, but it was a very good weekend beyond that, Craig. And it feels weird to talk about it because of how bad it was at the top end. But Saturday, I mean, my weekend wrap was a bit on the nose, but it was shit show Sunday, champagne Saturday. And not to put the flag in that shit show on Sunday, because they were awesome. They were the exception that proved the title there. But the junior reps, mate, 4 teams, 4 wins, girls through to grand final qualifiers, boys fighting this week at Eric Tweedale. It was a huge day at Ringrose Park, the home of the mighty chip sandwich. And yeah, we had 3 crazy comeback wins and then an absolutely dominant showing from the Tasha Gale. So I know where you want to start. You want to go chronologically with this one?
Well, we've already mentioned the Flegg winning 30-4, and we'd already touched on the New South Wales Cup team losing. That was what, 32-16, was it, John?
38-16 is what my notes have here.
38-16. Yeah. I missed the last try. It was, we, as you said, Matt Duffy dominated, and as you said, we pulled back into the game a few times only to have mistakes and, just not compete in the way we'd like in our own red zone at different times. So, but again, they're impacted by losing players to NRL as well. So tough times for the New South Wales Cup. But as you said, week 1 of the junior reps finals. And again, we'll give a plug to our preview podcast that we will do of the junior reps for this weekend. 4 teams in there, 4 teams won. 2 of them, both the girls' teams advanced to the 3rd week of the finals. They get this week off. The boys were in elimination finals, so if they'd have lost in that first week, it was curtains for the season. They now advance to this coming weekend where, again, the Eels are playing local because they get to play at Eric Tweedale Stadium which is hosting other games as well.
Tough for the away home teams that had the highest seeding, but that's how the junior reps work, don't they, with the centralised venues. But the Eels got a bit of luck there, get the home game as the underdogs. But yeah,
yes,
it was
just very quickly. Sorry, John, you go.
I was going to say, it was, I watched the first 2 games, you called the first 2 games, and then I covered the second 2 games, and there was some psychotic games in there, mate. Like, in the best kind of way, obviously, because the Eels won. The Harold Matts game, mate, my God. Like, you talk about the curtain being drawn on the season, they were dead and buried. But they found a way. Plenty of credit to the boys there. They fought so hard. I was incredibly proud of that team.
Yeah, just to go through the results. So it started off with the older teams. Tarsha Gale were on first. Their first half was a complete demolition of the Bulldogs team, 26-0.
One conversion. They were nearly beating the clock with just 4-point efforts, yeah.
Yeah, six tries, and that a lot of those tries were out wide. It was literally perfect football. And I spoke to Coach Ryan Walker after the game, and I said, mate, that first half, he said, I was dreaming about having a performance like that last night. It was certainly a dream come true for him as a coach with the way that the girls performed. It was probably some of the best football that I've seen in girls' pathways ever. And we've seen not just Parramatta teams win, but when you go to finals football, you see the best of the best in the grand finals. And the Eels aren't always in those grand finals, and you're sitting through other grand finals watching it while you're waiting for maybe the Eels game that you're there to see. So you do see other teams. And I can't recall a girls' game like that first half. And we lost a bit of wind in the sails in the second half.
Had it opened up with a nice try. Billy Vata and Bailey Marchong combined for a long-range try. But you knew the Dogs were going to come out fired up, and they put on 3 tries. But the Eels just did enough to arrest that momentum. And I was a little concerned that we're going to see the inverse of last week, Craig, where the Dogs had the big first half, the Eels ran them down. But the Eels much more composed in the second half as compared to the Dogs in the week before. And, yeah, very deserved win, very deserved a week off. And, look, that it's a very timely reminder that they are the reigning premiers, mate. They are the big dogs in this competition, and they're not going to be easy beats defending their title.
Yeah, so 30-14 then. Then in the SG Ball, my goodness, the cliche of a game of 2 halves certainly applied there, because the Eels were, I won't, maybe atrocious is the wrong word, but let's just say they were extremely ordinary in the first half, and they were down 20-6 at half time. And rapidly, they wiped out that deficit almost as soon as the second half commenced. It was try on try on try, and they ended up running out 34-20 victors in that. And by the end, it wasn't even a contest. No. It was a demolition job.
Yeah, it was a.
Yeah, so that was again the Bulldog.
Was it a 26-28-0 run in the second half? Yeah, 28-0 shutout.
28-0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I wrote about this obviously in my blog, Craig, in the weekend wrap. The Dogs went after our starting middles. You know, Nunn, Trey Stewart, Talangi, and Koino, all of who we rate incredibly highly. You know, there's some legit first graders in those 4 players there. They got schooled early on. The Dogs went after our middle, and they could have kicked stones and not put in, but they came out of the second half shot out of a cannon, and they laid that platform that led to that demolition job. So full credit to the boys there, because they got beat up early on and then managed to find a way to get back into it. Player best on field there, Cyrus Bloomfield, Craig. We've actually we've been pumping him up for the last couple of weeks because he's been that good. Not often you get to say that a winger is comprehensively best on field, but he was so good. Scored a hattie, including a 90-metre run against the play try where he scooped up an errant pass and showed off his wheels. But I was super impressed with the stuff he did away from scoring. Immaculate high pointing of the ball, offensively and defensively under the high ball from kicks. Some great ruck work. It was a big game from the left winger there.
And a shout out to our good mate Josh, who had he put a great graphic out, didn't he, with the a picture of of Cyrus with first grade
all
printed
over him.
It's
Yes, he's got first grade written all over him, and it's just a Cyrus with about 20 different first grades written all over him there. Quality meme there from Josh. That was very, very good. But yeah, obviously
so that was 34.
Yeah. What a crazy SG ball too, Craig, because the Eels finished the regular season 6-1-1. They were fifth on the ladder. There were 4 teams of 7 win or better records this year. And then the team they're playing, the South Sydney Rabbitohs next week, the one that gave them the big hiding in round 6, they lost to Manly in a high-scoring game, 36-30. So it is a wild year in the SG ball this season.
Oh, and we'll talk about it in the preview. That is a tough second week encounter to face the Rabbitohs.
Both boys teams drawing the top seeds. Funnily enough, the Harold Matts also getting the 1 seed too because Newcastle upset by Illawarra.
Well, way back when the Eels were upset by Illawarra, because they were sitting lower.
Funny how the season changes. Like it looked like a really bad loss back then, 0-3 Illawarra Steelers, and now they're through the grand final qualifier. So yeah, it's junior reps are a funny beast.
Yeah, so that I was blogging those first 2 games, and with big scoring halves of football, it's atrocious trying to keep up with describing what's going on because you're always behind, and you also want to do justice to what you're describing, and it's not always possible. And there was a few tries, especially for the next one I'm going to talk about is the Lisa Viola Cup, because Ruby and Osi Tuivaiti had a hat trick, and they were all in the corner. And where I was blogging from the grandstand, I had a blocked view, so I had to stand up every time the play went there while I'm trying to describe what's going on. Yeah, I have the 2 thumbs on the phone. So, but again, they were down 12-0, ended up winning 28-18. I think they had a run of 28-0 there, and then I think from memory, did the Central Coast Roosters score the last try?
They did. There was a lovely little set piece between one of their forwards and their fullback. Some actual deft hands from the big girl in the middle there. And, look, Central Coast Roosters shot out of a cannon this one. They mixed some power with some ball playing and got out to an early lead. But a Hine Rakiti try before half-time put the Eels back on the board. And then in the second half, it was just one-way traffic. Riley Cash had a nice little dummy and go. And that was emulated by Sarah Alameddine. So you had your 5'8" and your lock forward throwing these big dummies and go through and touch. And then Tegan Nicholas and Ruby Nosi Tuivaiti combining for a few tries down that right edge. So, look, undefeated on the season still, Craig. Chasing that dream of a perfect year is still very much intact. And again, they're a defending premier and they look every bit the reigning champ.
And they got that win on the weekend without Isabella Bell and Tamika Withers, and it gives a big thumbs up to that rotating team selections that happened through the season, where they managed to qualify every player in the squad for finals football by getting their games up. Everyone got the opportunity. And then finally, John, the big heart stopper with the Eels somehow getting home against the Raiders. And again, it was they really, they looked for all money gone and played in such a way that they deserve to be gone. They're down 28-16 with about 8 minutes to go, and then end up winning 30-28. 2 late tries. And how's this, John? They've struggled to kick goals all season.
Ice in his veins, Liam Martin. Oh, my Lord.
Liam Martin. I think the only kick that he missed was from the sideline, and he hit the crossbar. There was one from the sideline, but he was kicking them from the sideline. And even that last kick, it was for the penalty. It was one of his easiest kicks of the day, but it was that little bit of an awkwardness where if you were nervous.
It was in the range where Luke Bird has probably missed a couple in his storied career as a goal kicker.
Yeah.
Where it's not quite the throw over as a penalty goal, but yeah, Liam Martin, ice in his veins. Look, full credit to the Canberra Raiders, Craig. They came out of this one, punched the Eels in the face twice with a couple of tries from scrums. Sonny Lavao, their captain and back row, was very good, but I thought that Bowie Logue, the 5'8", from the left centre, I think it was Atlas Atalua, Eels couldn't stop them all game. And they had long stretches of that game where Canberra were cutting sways for them, Craig, with those two players. And when Bowie Logue, who was an absolute energizer bunny in this game, charged down to Marty's clearing kick, which was a huge hustle play, and got the deserved room service bounce because he made the big play, and he scores with, was it 15 minutes to go to put him up by 12. I just, you could feel, like, just even doing the updates myself, you just feel the energy seeping out the fingers, like, oh my God, the game's done. Like, it's just like they've tried, but the Red Raiders are too hot. But William Mamia Epe, I mean, Cyrus Bloomfield earlier in the day had been best on field as a left winger. And to be fair, he had great competition from Hayden Bell in this game and a couple other players too, Liam Martin obviously as well. But Mamia Epe had a huge run against the play intercept. Well, it was a pseudo-intercept because it was after that charge down try, which was after an error from poor Al Hazim, who'd been good in the game but struggled with the sun in his eyes under the high ball. They'd scored from dummy half following his drop. They had the two tries and they were threatening for the third one, attacking Parramatta's left edge. Mamia Epe makes a great gem. It was probably going to get the tackle regardless of the error, but the ball was spilled by the winger into the air, straight up there, and William just scoops it out perfectly and just races downfield to score. Huge player. He had a massive game. Had a nice try under the high ball earlier in that game too. So put the Eels back in it. Liam Martin, alongside other Eels too, but he puts over Williams' running mate down that left edge and Tyler Lama for the try. Need to get both those conversions. First one was from out wide. Second one was from about 10 metres in. So neither were easy. Slots them both. And then cometh the man, Hayden Bell. I called him the T1000 in the wrap-up, Craig, because it might just take liquid nitrogen or molten steel to stop him. Relentless motor. And he'd had a great game. Gets in behind the ruck against the fatiguing defence with a great carry. Baits out a loose arm up high. And he got hit very cleanly against the head. It was clearly a penalty. And it was his energy that created the penalty because he put them under pressure, under duress. And then Liam Martin kicks the goal. No repeat of that game against South Sydney back in round 6, Craig, where they took the brilliant field goal play and then conceded the short kickoff and the try. They got the job done off the restart. What an effort! Really proud of the boys there, mate. That was a gutsy win because the Raiders threw everything at them and they managed to find a way.
John, I have to agree 100% with your summation of the Eels' performances. I want to shout out that player that you mentioned from the Raiders, Logue, because...
I talk about playing his hair on fire. He was a demon out there.
Yeah, if people didn't see the game, I joked, because he was a lightweight, and I joked to the others, he looks like he's 12. Like, it looks like a 12-year-old playing out there on the field.
Don't judge a book by its cover, mate. Yeah, he was out there.
No, and then I was getting frustrated because he was bouncing out of tackles. He was knocking blokes over. He was the general out there for the Raiders, and because Ham and Jeff were saying, he goes pretty well for a 12-year-old, doesn't he? And it was
quickly coming back to haunt you, mate. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Honestly, he was that tiny compared to the other players because there's some big players in both the Raiders and the Eels teams, and especially tall players. But so a shout out to him. He did exceptionally well for someone who is as tiny as he looks to be out there on the field. I hope that he does get just a little bit more size. Like just for his sake, for that he is able, because he's clearly got talent. And even though he's not in the Parramatta system, you like seeing when you can see someone who is obviously they're a rugby league player, and he's a league player.
Things were happening around him. We do give a shout out
to opponents when you see them, especially in pathways. So that brings our Eels wrap to a conclusion. I think, John. The only other thing is just to say again, looking forward to the foundation dinner on Friday night this week. I believe they've got over 600 people attending, so that's going to be something else. It'll be a big event, and with the players, the NRL players being there as well, I hope maybe that does serve as an inspiration for them to fight, because that Eels team that won in '86, they had to fight and scrap.
Yeah,
and
that one didn't come easy. Yeah,
that tells you that was a defensively like it was just, they went to battle, because that Bulldogs team, they used to enjoy physically belting the tripe out of opponents. The Eels had to go into a football battle to win that. They did. And I mentioned in the short video I made that the ending of that game with the Parramatta players that were desperately defending their line when it looked like the Bulldogs were going to score. That again, it was fight. It was the fight in them, that desperation to win. So maybe it might inspire our current players just to find another gear come Sunday. So there we are, John. Over to you for your musical interlude.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a death time on the Parramatta Eels this week, mate. So I'm going back to Monty Python, but I've crossed over a bit of Chopin. So a bit of one of the classic scenes from this one's the Holy Grail, I'm pretty certain. But up against the understandable, you'll pick up the music in the background pretty quickly, but I think it fits what's happening to Parramatta right now. Goes for a little bit this one, so bear with me. Yeah, through the streets of Parramatta, mate. Got the old cart, bring out your dead. Yeah, Neil, 1 hour, 45 minutes just on the Eels. There's not much to talk about the NRL, though, so we'll go through it quickly.
Yeah, don't worry, we're not aiming for 3 hours tonight.
Wait for it. I'm not sure if you smell the skit, but there is a nice twist here. Here's one. I'm not dead. Who do you think that is at Parramatta, mate? Who's just there? I'm not dead.
He says he's not dead. Yes, he is. I'm not. He isn't. Well, he will be soon. He's very ill. I'm getting better. No, you're not.
I'm getting better.
I can't take him like that. It's against regulations. I don't want to go on the car. Oh, just baby. I can't take him. I feel fine. Well, do us a favour. You can't. Well, can you hang around a couple of minutes?
Bit of grave humour there for the Parramatta Eels.
Robinsons, they've lost 9 today. Well, when's your next run? Thursday.
Hopefully not Sunday, though.
You're not fooling anyone, you know. Look, isn't there something you can do? I feel happy. I feel happy. Oh, thanks very much. See you on Thursday.
I'm sure a content creator can put Parramatta head.
Yeah, it could easily transpose some Parramatta heads onto the bodies being put into the cart there. Yep.
Got shit all over him.
So, John, moving into the NRL news, we're going to be very, very quick with this, so don't worry. We're aiming for our usual length podcast. You spoke on it earlier. I think a theme for the NRL this week is, in contrast to Parramatta, it's returning players. The Bulldogs have got their share of returning players this week, and it's headlined by a big recruit.
Yeah, Leo Thompson.
And also potentially a couple of star players returning in
Crichton and Curran.
So Crichton and Curran, it's
might be a shade of green on the blue and gold this week, mate, because I think there's going to be a lot of envy looking at these teams getting some players back. Dylan Brown back for Newcastle. And look, Newcastle's amidst a bit of an injury crisis themselves, as well as Brisbane. Like, if it wasn't for Parramatta being at a comical level of injuries, because that's where we're at, it's comical. I think there'd be, imagine in Brisbane, there is a lot of talk about Brisbane's injuries, but in the Sydney media anyway. But yeah, it's hard not to be a little bit jealous, mate. Watching some other clubs come good with their injuries, while the Eels just seem to be absolutely snake-bitten. But Bulldogs also in the news for a bit more poaching talk. I think it's a bit interesting, because there was literally the Lachlan Galvin provision brought in about tampering, and yet Phil. Did you see Phil Gould's comments? I don't know if you saw.
No.
I'm going to quote this, and I don't want to end up as a soundbite in this one, but I'll put my voice out there. Where is the quote? Let me go find it, because it's a doozy. It's a doozy. Here it is. There it is. This is on. It must be a talking 100% footy, whatever his 9 program is. That's an athlete.
Yeah.
Gee whiz, he's going to be a good player. He's just creamy, so fluid, beautiful, like a warm apple pie on a Sunday. In relation to Jareem Buller, a player that's been linked to Canterbury, by the way. So a little bit of tampering going on there from Gus. And look,
it's not that; it's sounding like American Pie.
Look, there's some innuendo there. There's some ways to read that differently. But after what happened with Galvin last year, the NRL actually brought in some stricter, framework around those sort of comments being tampering for people that hold the 2 hats as both game commentators and club officials. And Gould's out there, absolutely. I mean, he's not even buttering him up; he's creaming him up. So, look, Bull has been linked to the Bulldogs, like separately from this incident here. But it's has he met him? Yeah, he hasn't met him, has he? So that's the question, right, guys? Chat.
There's been no succulent Chinese meal had as yet.
Yep. And
so, speaking of the Tigers too, they're blessed with having Luai come back this week when they're playing a Broncos team that's decimated by injuries as well. So I'm going to say it, they were kissed on the proverbial against us with the calls that went their way. They faced a Newcastle team who finally succumbed to some of those key injuries last week and performed as we expected. We'd been thinking they were going to over the first few rounds when they were missing those players. And now, as you said, they're missing both of their back rowers after last weekend. So, look, I guess the only other thing to talk about, John, is that Penrith result. How much did that surprise you? Or was it a case of we just saw that the result of Volandi's ball where if one team gets that momentum, as we spoke about at the start, if one team gets that momentum, it's pretty hard to arrest it or get it back if you get taken to the point of fatigue or just being on the back foot, because we saw the sort of errors from Penrith that you haven't seen all season, and you saw their defence capitulate in a way that's you wouldn't expect to see from Penrith. But or was it just a case of the Bulldogs doing their homework, because they certainly like to hit that edge where Blaze...
The dogs played well, and they did target Blaze, that's fair. They actually went after Blaze and he got exposed. But, mate, I saw stuff from Cleary and Yo and Edwards that you wouldn't see in under sevens, mate. Like, there were, like, bad errors. Like, questions about are their heads even in the game errors. I haven't seen those 3 play that bad ever. So, look, Canterbury played well.
And there they were together.
Yeah.
Together having bad games.
Exactly. Yeah. Canterbury played well, and they absolutely put themselves in the frame for a win, regardless of Penrith dicking around or not. But I haven't seen those 3 players play that badly, on top of Blaze getting exposed badly defensively, which was a good game planning. And unfortunately, I was in chat discussing this before, Craig, but not looking forward to what Preston might do to our left edge. One of the premier line-running back rowers in the grade, in the competition. And it's going to be on Paul Ronnie Volkman and I guess Charlie Geimer. Again, not sure how the back row configuration is this week to somehow make that work. But, yeah, Penrith were awful. Like, it is hard to fathom that is the same team that played us a couple of weeks ago. But that's football. And as good as Penrith are, even they can cock it up in the 6-game era. So... yeah, I thought, again, daps to the Dogs there. They play good football, but Penrith were just dreadful, mate. That was, I don't know. It that caused a minor reassessment of this year for me, because they are still the best team in the competition, but they looked very mortal there. And the question is, does that happen again anytime soon? In which case, I think there is cause for maybe a serious reconsideration of what the hierarchy is in the NRL, because they'd still be the best, but they'd be very beatable.
Yeah, and maybe it just, as you say, it makes them look more human in the context of the entire season. The next one, John, that I wanted to mention is, because it's unavoidable to not mention it, it's the Dragons' 6 straight losses, and it looks like Flanagan, at the very least, will survive until round 8, because they've got those event games that are coming up, like Anzac Day. Have they missed the boat that Manly were able to catch early on?
Well, look, look, the jury's out on whether Manly caught the boat or not, right? Like, is it still a dead cat bounce? Who knows? They got pushed by the Dragons for a good part of that game. But in saying that, yeah, Flanagan, he was a man completely bereft of solutions a couple of weeks ago, and I don't think he's found much since, mate. And he's got a young star that wants out because he can't get a look in Loco Pacifici Tonga. He just lost one of his senior established stars / great players in Jaydn Su'A. The Dragons have some great young talent. Obviously the Couchman boys. Hamish Stewart's a good young bull as well. They've got Cade Reid is the player you hear about as a young half on the up, and there's a lot of discourse about whether they should throw him in the first grade or not right now. I'm not sure if he's ready. He's got 5 New South Wales Cup games to his name. I'm not sure if AJ's still here, but I think it's 5. But he's a good talent. They've got all these solid young pieces around the park, but there's so many holes there. And Flanagan, I think they should move swiftly, Craig, and at least appoint an interim or custodian coach and just go with it there. But I don't know. This isn't the first time St. George have been, paralysed by inertia almost, right? Like they've done it in the past. The whole, doused era of St. George, they didn't want to be moving on from coaches too quickly. I understand not trying to rush a coach out the door, but you can't look at what Flanagan's doing there and be confident there is a long-term plan. So, yeah, if I was them, I would be looking at exit strategies for Flanagan, but they don't seem to be entertaining at least, 5 games. Thank you, AJ. They don't seem to be entertaining a swift solution there because they had a board meeting that's been pushed back, I think. So, I don't know. I
think the board meeting mightn't have been in relation to the NRL performance or the football club. It might have been something else. Anyway, John, looking at the Dragons, I feel sorry for Flanagan on that game against Manly, because how many tries did they butcher?
Yeah,
in that game.
some serious points left on the field there.
And Manly were, I thought, apart from some strength at the start of the game, I thought that Manly were damn ordinary through the rest of that game, and were so beatable that. And this is where I'm angry from a personal perspective, because I'm getting my tips wrong, where I'm seeing this is a team ready to be beaten, or in the case of Canterbury and Penrith, I was thinking, well, this is a certainty. I can't tip against Penrith. There's all these different reasons to get it wrong, and I'm finding every reason to get it wrong. But that Manly and St. George game, I thought they might lift for Flanagan that week, and I thought Manly, they've had their week where they surged quite well after the change of coaches, but I thought they'll come back to reality. They'll hit their usual form, and they did. If they were playing one of the better performed teams, they probably would have had a score put on them, Manly, because St. George, as you said, they left so many out there, John. But having said that about Flanagan, he's now made the second comment that doesn't help his cause. The first comment was at the start of the season when he said, look, we're not going to win the comp this year. when I'm sure that was not any surprise to people to say they're not going to.
Oh, you back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
I'm here.
You dropped out momentarily. That was a Discord thing.
Okay. So, as I was saying, everyone would have been thinking St George's not going to win the comp. But you can't have the coach come out and say, we're not going to win the comp this year. You just don't talk about that. You just talk about, well, we've got a goal.
There are so many ways to eloquently go around the topic, aren't there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after the game this weekend, where he goes, well, who am I going to bring in? How can I make changes? Who am I going to bring in? Well, you don't make those comments publicly. There's different ways that you can answer that sort of question. And maybe it's a case of, well, he's just brutally honest about himself, and we should respect that he's being brutally honest about himself and his team. But you'd surely say something along the lines of, we're probably at the stage where we need to think about team changes. Well, we are definitely at that stage. So what we will be looking at is, are there better options playing in the New South Wales Cup that deserve a chance in first grade? And if you don't end up selecting them, so be it. But if you're in a press conference and you're saying, when your own team gets to hear it, your New South Wales Cup players get to hear it, well, I'd like to make changes, but who can I bring in? Again, the messaging is not good. It's just not good at all. So I think he's writing his own ticket to be sacked, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's team performance where they've lost 11 in a row, something like that.
Backdated? I don't know. Going back to 2025.
Yeah. I think they lost the last 5 games of last year, so it is something like 11 in a row.
Double check that for you. While we're yapping, I'll just go to.
And of course, that was
schedule.
part of the argument on 360, wasn't it? With Bulldog Richie saying, "Oh, well, St George is being criticised for their performances. Why not Parramatta?" And then it was pointed out to, well, St George haven't won. Well, they haven't won in 11 weeks.
Last five
11
games they lost. Yeah. So.
And what was their record before those last 5 games?
So going back to their last win, which was against the Raiders, bizarrely. They won in round 22. Then they lost to the Cowboys, the Bulldogs, the Roosters, the Raiders, and then they beat Para. That was that game at Wollongong where the Eels played that terrible first half. So, yeah, they lost another 4 games, beat Para, then lost another 2 games, beat the Knights. And then, you start going win, loss, win, win, loss to us, the Zach Lomax Golden Point game. Yeah, so they are... It's been a struggle for them, mate. And, again, that's where I think Dean Ritchie's agenda fell a bit loose, was that the Eels had success last year, at the back end of last year, and in the preseason too.
So he won, 8 games last year, was it?
He won.
I think.
Again, I'll just quickly pull up the ladder just to make sure we get these numbers right. St. George won 8 games, negative 130-point differential.
So his last 30 games, he's only won 8 of his last 30.
Yes, it's pretty rough. And he won. Jason Rolls winning 12 of his last 30 old Bulldog. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, that's the. I think that's about all we need to cover with the NRL at the moment. There's probably there's clubs out there that would have as much internal news that you'd be wanting to talk about, but I think we've hit where we wanted to land tonight. Are there any questions there or comments from chat, John? That
I don't know if Michael's still in chat. Michael Formosa, but he did ask way back about Riles' reticence to pull the trigger on Tiankum Brown, and what do you want to see from someone else? What do you think he needs to see from Tiankum to get him into the NRL team? He's obviously very close, just purely from an injury perspective, but looks like he's been overlooked for both Saxon and Tony this week. What do you want to see? What do you think the coaches need to see from Big T to get him into that first grade frame?
John, I only saw the last, say, 10 minutes of the reserve grade in the first half and then all of the second half. I just think maybe they had certain KPIs that they were looking for from Tiancum from that game and probably the round before that he played, that maybe he's failed to hit, or it's a case of what Jason Riles said as well, that you always want to think about when you're going to debut someone. Now, Saxon Pryke, I think from memories, maybe had one more pre-season than Tiancum as far as an NRL pre-season. Yeah, that's what we have to remember about someone like Tiancum, is he's only had one NRL pre-season. And it may well be, John, that he debuts in a week or two, and that part of what he's going through at the moment, where he's being named in that 19, is that he'll be going through the process of sitting on the bench and getting that familiarity with being there, and there's a chance he might have to play depending on what happens with injuries during the game. So they've got that nervous tension that's there that they have to deal with. And having gone through that experience, then when the time comes that he's named and is more likely to play because he's in the 17 rather than the 19, that's a better way for him to be introduced. He's had that little bit of a lead in to it. So maybe there's a bit of that going on as well. I think he'll play first grade before the end of the year, John.
Yeah, oh, look, I think it's very much on the cards, and probably sooner rather than later.
Because the rate of attrition that's going on at the moment, he could well come on during this game, as I said, because every game we're being hit with the injury stick, and players who aren't expected to come onto the field where we're having to activate the 18th man, we're not going a game without losing players. So I think he'll debut, and the problem for Jason Riles is he would have had plans for how debuts might come about for different players. What the ideal circumstance would be to give them their
his wording in that Titans presser gave a pretty distinct, feeling that he has plans for each and every young prospect in the pathways, and there is a certain amount of football he wants to pump into them at flag and cup level before he thinks they should be in consideration for the NRL. And that's not an unreasonable stance to have. But obviously this week he's been forced to throw Saxon in there, and maybe he thinks that Saxon's been close to getting into the NRL. So, but yeah, that's where we're at with Tiancum. Neil's got
certainly got more cup games under his belt.
Exactly. And the two, and look, the two NRL pre-seasons is an important metric, because it's something that was being said to us in the past, Craig, that you're probably not NRL ready, like even remotely NRL ready, until you've had two NRL pre-seasons pumped into you, because you just, to get the hard yards, the wear and tear, and just getting used to the physicality that comes with the grade. Neil had a couple of questions here, Craig, double barrel on the dev contracts. He's critical, and look, perfectly reasonably critical. He says, surely it's bad play not to have an outside back in our development deals. And then I think he's tried to figure out who on dev deals. Where was your comments gone, mate? So he's as far as he can tell, it's Lorenzo, Funayuta, Latu, and Brown on dev spots. So he thinks we've got two spots open. Should we be upgrading Araz Nava to a dev deal? I believe Lincoln Fletcher holds a dev deal. Hence his presence on the injury report this week. The club, I think, are obliged to report if he's on the top roster or the top-ish roster. And I'm not sure about the last spot. Maybe it is the case, because don't forget you got Apple title there too. A lot of fans want to see him be upgraded and not be lost by the Parramatta Eels. It's a tough spot, and I don't know. Should they be, if they do have the means? Because I'm not sure if there's another player on a dev deal and we've used all our allocated slots. Should they be throwing it to Nava or to Upper? What's the play there, mate?
Well, I think what it might come down to is, will there be any need to do that? Because Arpa, he becomes available to play again in round 15? And by then, if you're on a train and trial, you're eligible anyway. And right now, with the lack of players, that someone like a Raz has already been granted dispensation to be used. So the only need to upgrade them to a development contract would be if it's part of your plans to keep them, that you're upgrading their contract because it's a lead into being a top 30 next year, or that players have come back and you need them to also be eligible for selection where their dispensation may not apply anymore because you've got players to select in their position. So you want them still available and where there's maybe no dispensation. So, yeah, probably not at this stage. It really comes down to there's outs for clubs if you haven't got players on a dev deal covering a range of positions where you can use, if you've got the players there at the club that you think should be on a dev deal, you can still use them with dispensation. It's just if you have an issue where someone's form is outstanding, there's someone in first grade that you'd like to replace them with the player whose form is outstanding and they're not eligible and you're not going to get dispensation for them. That's where the upgrade comes in. And that's what happened really with Riley Smith last year, wasn't it? That he jumped pretty quickly to being ostensibly from fourth in line as a dummy half to being at least the second pick by the start of the season proper. So they needed to upgrade him to be able to select him in that very first game where he came off the bench. So, yeah, once we're now at round 7, I don't think that, and we've got dispensation, I don't think the development contracts come into it unless it becomes part of a strategy for their retention.
Yeah, on that note, chat's starting to wind down. Gary's confident that the Eels are going to extend to upper. Three-year deal is his tip, so keep an eye on that one. I'll have to wait and see, Craig. He's got a bit of market out there, and there's some tough calls the Eels have to make here because bear in mind, Upper had a fantastic debut, and I want to see him stay as a Parramatta Eel. But there's some great young players not too far behind him too that the Eels are trying to get into the frame as well. Guys like Cam Bambutt and then Riley Davis obviously at fullback there, and then Cyrus Bloomfield's a player that we've been pumping up last few weeks for good reason. Plenty of good young players coming through, and got to keep the right ones. You're not going to keep them all. Got to keep the right ones, or as many as the right ones as possible. So yeah, we wait and see what the Eels do, what sort of moves they're going to make on the chessboard that is the NRL and the recruitment. But until then, yeah, I think we'll call a wrap on this one here, mate. It's 2 hours and 8 minutes.
It didn't end up as long as what people might have feared when we hit
when hour 40 on the Para.
The hour 20 minute, the hour 40 minutes or 50 minutes when we've by the time we finish the Eels content. But we've got there. Anyone that stayed on to the end, we thank you very much. I know we get few people drop off once we finish the Eels and get into NRL.
Understandably, but plenty of faithful sticking around for the NRL chat, and we do appreciate it sincerely. But yeah, I think it's time to put a wrap on it, and I'll throw it over to you, big fella, to take us away.
Well, in this week where we're playing the Bulldogs, we're sure the Eels are going to return to the fight because they want to make us Para proud, and we're all going to be able to say, "Go, you mighty Eels." Good night. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you for our preview podcasts. And then don't forget Leagues Club this weekend.